Have you ever noticed the priest washing his hands during the Mass? If you look closely, you'll see him washing his hands in a little bowl of water right before he starts the part of the Mass called the Liturgy of the Eucharist. That special moment has a name in the Catholic Church. It's called the Lavabo. And it's an important part of the Mass that many Catholics don't really know too much about. So today, let's learn what the Lavabo is, when it happens, and why it's important in the Catholic Mass. The word lavabo is Latin for I will wash. That's exactly what the priest does during the Lavabo. Washes his hands in a little bowl of water at the credence table. But there's a lot more to this washing of the hands than meets the eye. So let's dive deeper into what the Lavabo is all about. A lavabo is a device used to provide water for the washing of hands. It consists normally of a ewer or a container of some kind to pour water, and a bowl to catch the water as it falls off the hands. In ecclesiastical usage, it refers to all of the basin in which the priest washes their hands. The ritual that surrounds this action in the Catholic Mass, and the architectural feature, or fitting where a basin or place for one is recessed into the side wall of the sanctuary or projects from it. If this last includes or included a drain, it is a piscina used for washing the church plate and other fittings, though the terms are often confused. In secular usage, it is an obsolete term for any sink or basin for washing hands, especially in a lavatory. And churches from the time of Constantine the Great were built with an exonarthex that included a fountain known as a cantharus, where Christians would wash their hands, face, and feet before entering the worship space. The practice of ablutions before prayer and worship in Christianity symbolizes separation from sins of the Spirit and surrender to the Lord. Canthari continue to be used in some Orthodox churches, where worshippers also remove their shoes before entering into the presence of God. In many early and medieval monasteries, there would be a large lavabo or lavatorio, where the brethren would wash their hands before entering the church. St. John Chrysostom mentions the custom in his day of all Christians washing their hands before entering the church for worship. This practice was first legislated in the rule of St. Benedict in the 6th century, but has earlier antecedents. The name lavabo, or I shall wash in Latin, is derived from the words of Psalm 26 to 6-12, which the celebrant traditionally recites while he washes his. I will wash my hands in innocence, so will I compass thine altar, O Lord. The washing of hands during the recitation of these psalm verses is a very ancient usage in the Catholic Church. In the 3rd century, there are traces of a custom of washing the hands as a preparation for prayer on the part of all Christians. And from the 4th century onwards, it appears to have been usual for the ministers at the communion service, Liturgy of the Eucharist, ceremonially to wash their hands before the more solemn part of the service as a symbol of inward purity. In most liturgical traditions, the priest washes his hands after vesting, before the beginning of the liturgy. This washing may be accompanied by prayers. Many Christian rites also have the priest wash his hands before beginning the Eucharistic Prayer. In the Apostolic Constitutions 8, 11, the hands of the celebrants are washed just before the dismissal of the catechumens. In the Roman Rite, the celebrant washes his hands privately before vesting for Mass, perhaps using the prayer Da Domini Virtutem. Within the rite of Mass, he washes his hands after preparing the offerings on the altar. This is the lavabo ceremony proper. It appears in both the Tridentine and the post-Vatican II forms of the Roman Rite Mass. It probably developed from the need to wash the hands after receiving the gifts brought by the people at the offertory, as was used at Rome. In the Gallican Rite, the offerings were prepared before Mass began. As in the Eastern liturgy of preparation, so in those rites there was no long offertory rite nor need for a lavabo before the Eucharistic prayer. In the Middle Ages, the Roman Rite actually had 2 washings of hands, one before and one after the offertory. The first one has since disappeared, and the one which remains is the second. At High Mass or Sung Mass, in the older rite, and in the more solemn forms available in the newer version, after the offertory, the celebrant incenses the altar and is then incensed himself at the epistle side or south side of the altar. He remains there while his hands are washed by the acolytes, who ought to be waiting by the credence table. The first acolyte pours water from the cruite over his fingers into a little dish. The second then hands him the towel to dry the fingers. Meanwhile, in the 1962 rubrics, he says the psalm verses, I will wash my hands among the innocent. The end of the psalm. In the newer Mass, the celebrant says the prayer, Lord, wash away my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. A bishop at High Mass wears the precious mitre or mitra preciosa while he is censed and then washes his hands. A larger silver basin and cruet are generally used for a bishop, though there is no official requirement for this. For the lavabo, the priest will use a simple linen towel, which is often considered to be one of the altar linens, though technically it is not. Though ecclesiastical lavabos are ordinarily of metal, a familiar lavabo consists of a terracotta tank with a faucet attached and a small basin below it. Today it is a common feature in many gardens in Europe and the US as a decoration whose practical use has been long forgotten. The lavabo may be considered the forerunner of the modern sink. In several European languages, such as French, Italian, Serbo-Croatian, Spanish, Turkish, lavabo is the modern word for sink or wash basin. Why is the lavabo important? Lavabo is an important part of the Mass because it reminds us that we should come to God with a clean heart and a clean spirit. When we go to confession and receive God's forgiveness, we are made clean in the eyes of God. But sometimes we still need to work on being pure in our thoughts and actions. The lavabo is a reminder for all of us to try our best to be pure in our thoughts and actions so that we can fully love and serve God. The water that the priest uses for the lavabo is blessed water. This means that God has set it apart for a special purpose. The priest uses this blessed water to bless the people after the creed during the Mass, so the water that is used for the lavabo ends up being used as a blessing for the whole congregation. Okay, kids, the next time you go to Mass, pay attention and look for the lavabo. It might help you to prepare your heart and soul to receive Jesus in Holy Communion. And remember, Jesus loves you very much, and so do we. That's why we're always here every week, bringing you new videos to help you in your faith journey. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with other Catholic families and children who can learn to love the Mass. Thanks for watching.